So millions of people in the world fall ill and many die as a result of eating unsafe food. In the year 2000, the World Health Organization recognized food safety as an essential public health function. Today, we look further into the business of food in South Africa and what the food industry is worth and if the food producers are compliant. But for more on this conversation, we are joined by Thabile Nkunjana, a senior economist from the National Agricultural Marketing Council. Thank you so much for joining us and a good morning to you, Thabile.
Good morning to you, Naledi, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think this is quite a big discussion, isn't it? And I think for the agricultural sector, an important one because we're so reliant on the sector, particularly in South Africa, for us to have food on our tables. But I'm keen for you to maybe talk to us about what the landscape has looked like, particularly over the past year and a half, after we saw the conflict in Ukraine, what that has done to food supply, particularly some of the key crops like yeast, like maize in the country.
Yeah, so as you correctly mentioned, that the conflict has caused a lot of issues in terms of food supply in general across the world. But as far as South Africa is concerned, in recent years we have been fortunate enough to be able to produce quite enough food. But even though we've managed to produce that food, the issue was that South Africa is not a bigger player into the global market in terms of supplying global products, and therefore what was happening outside was going to somehow get into our shores. Of course, that was going to be indirect because the issue was that food production was quite higher outside. So and because South Africa does not have too much influence to as far as prices are concerned, that those issues outside kind of trickled into our local market, and that is why you have seen prices generally quite higher. But I think for now we are seeing a bit of improvement, and that of course it has to do with the amount of grains, particularly your maize, your wheat, and other grains that the country is producing. We have quite a number, at least larger supplies as far as that production is concerned.
Yeah, I think what we can both agree on then is that, certainly the agricultural sector, even during the COVID pandemic, really showing some real resilience, right? And that's, I think, something for South Africans to be really proud of where that is concerned. But where are some of the vulnerable spots? So what are South Africa's agricultural production issues that we really need to be wary of? We're covering, of course, the story of the 6 trucks that were burnt down in KwaZulu-Natal, 5 more that have been torched in Mpumalanga. I imagine that even just the supply and movement of agricultural goods or crops, it does become somewhat of an issue?
So yeah, the issue with the transportation of grains. I remember South Africa, we transport most of our food by road, and part of that is used by huge trucks. So at the moment, it is quite a scary situation, as the president this morning has alluded to, that it is presenting a serious threat to the economy of this country, and of course to the supply of our general food. Because as I was saying, because we don't have quite reliable rails that we can transport our food via to. So it is quite at the moment a serious issue in terms of threatening the transit of food from one producing area to another, and that is also moving it from the primary production to the processing, so that people can be able to get the end products at quite a time. But it is a developing situation, and it is being monitored drastically, and hopefully it's not going to be something that is going to escalate out of hand as much as we have seen improvements in food inflation. And recently it's because we have been seeing a bit of improvement in other technical issues here and there. So this one again, it presents a threat, but as far as having enough in South Africa, I think we are covered to that end, and that should be able to be shown in the food as already began from the data that we saw in May. And we are anticipating that towards going to the next few months, we will be able to see those prices improving, even though that again is going to depend on the number of situations, including the threat now that is being posed by the transportation of goods by road in South Africa, as you currently mentioned.
Yeah, and just lastly, before I let you go, some opportunities that you think South Africa really should be looking at in terms of even boosting our export capabilities, that we're able to bring some more money into the country, considering that, as you say, we have a very resilient agricultural sector, and perhaps we're able to also benefit and really leap from what we're producing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, as far as the export is concerned, I think we have quite, for commodities like maize, which is one of the products that, maize, wool, and, fruit, we are quite in a better space to be able to export those. But again, the issue is going to be, on the inefficiencies that have already been discussed around the ports and all that, because that is going to be an issue in terms of influencing how much of those products are going to go, into the other countries. But also, I think there is also a number of issues as far, but not to that extent, for apples and pears, where we have an estimation of relatively lower exports to the world. Those are some of the key and important, commodities that South Africa exports to the world, and it makes quite a good earning into that. And they'll be amongst the drivers in increasing, the export earnings. As you've seen for the past few years, South Africa has been registering, records in terms of our exports in value terms. So we are still optimistic, but of course, those are going to depend on the number of things in terms of, having efficient transit or transportation of our products into those markets, and of course, having to be able to earn quite enough. And that's something that I hope is going to be, seen or come to light, but is still a positive outcome at the moment. And we should not be very worried about that, except for products like your citrus, which is currently having some bit of issues here and there. Yeah. And we are hoping that that issue again is going to be resolved.
Yeah, Thabile, really good to speak to you. And thank you so much.